In terms of creativity, what we know is that there are networks in the brain, many networks that are very, very precisely wired. And it appears that when we are doing things like walking or showering, or when we're doing anything that doesn't require our conscious attention in order to perform it, that random firing occurs and it's setting up the opportunity for new rule sets for the frontal cortex, which is where all our rule sets exist, to come up with new ideas. It's almost like your brain is literally free to capture creative opportunities when you're in these kind of random thought states. Nobody really understands the creative process at the level of science, but we have a few kernels of truth that are absolutely clear. There's been a beautiful study, brain imaging study, where they watch people, where they're scanning the brains of people while they watch basketball, favorite team playing. And just like with the seconds and versus the breathing, et cetera, and the cold bath, the dopamine system kind of clicks on and gets ready. So dopamine is not about reward, it's about anticipation of reward. You get dopamine released when you think you're gonna get the thing, when you think you're gonna have sex, when you think you're gonna eat the ice cream.
That's when you get dopamine.
Dopamine, do. And then if you get the thing, there's a little bit further increase.
And then it drops.
And then it drops. But if you don't get the thing, you get a big drop below baseline. If you are not expecting something, or you're expecting something pretty good and something really good happens, huge dopamine increase. Now, drugs that increase dopamine, like cocaine and amphetamine, completely mess with this system. This is like naturally occurring dopamine release.
Right.
There seems to be two kinds of humor. I'll get back to the basketball thing in a moment, but there seem to be two kinds of humor. At least when I watch comedy, I'm kind of watching for it. I'm trying not to play neuroscientist and just enjoy it. But one is where there's this trail that's going along and all of a sudden something completely surprising hits you. It's rarely through pun, but it's like some collision where I never associated that with that.
Yeah.
But like, that's hilarious. And then the other, there's a story that the comedian is laying out, like a trail of breadcrumbs. And you're like, no, they're not going there. They're not going there.
Right.
They won't go there. And the surprise is that they go exactly where you think they might go.
Right.
So, and sometimes it's a confirmation. And then sometimes the surprise is that you pull from something earlier. And all of that is funny because it's all hitting the dopamine system.
Yes.
So
it's all anticipation related, it seems like.
yes, it's anticipation. And so it's sort of like surprises hit dopamine system. And so when they watch people or image the brains of people watching basketball, every time their team gets the ball and is heading down court, the time perception kind of switches over. Like, here we go. Here's the opportunity for another dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Well, people aren't thinking this, but that's what they're hoping. Now, there you could be, like a defensive block or something like that, a little dopamine hit. But it's your team scoring is the big anticipation. What it's basically reverses the direction of play.
Yeah.
In terms of creativity, what we know is that there are networks in the brain, many networks that are very, very precisely wired. The ability to move my hand in a very precise way develops. A baby can't, watching a baby eat when it's young, it's like food everywhere. And over time, they get better. Most people anyway. The circuits are very one-to-one, no slop in the circuitry. Likewise, if you already know how to do something like write or say your name, the circuits are like, they're nailed down. But the brain always maintains some random wiring. And it appears that when we are doing things like walking or showering, or when we're doing anything that doesn't require our conscious attention in order to perform it, the random firing occurs and it's setting up the opportunity for new rule sets for the frontal cortex, which is where all our rule sets exist, to come up with new ideas. It's almost like, imagine a painter, they've got their paints on the palette and they're painting, and then every once in a while, just by stopping and pausing, all of a sudden 20 new hues of red show up. And it's not that you would use all of them, but then you turn around and you go, oh, but you might take one and kind of elaborate and create something new with it. What's really interesting is that if we don't allow ourselves any time for the brain to be in this kind of random thought generation pattern, sleep and dreaming or emerging from sleep and dreaming is one such time. Maybe low dose cannabis is another time, which is why, or some people have a drink or two, which probably I'm not suggesting, but that is one way to kind of reduce our kind of constriction over what has to happen next. These random networks they're tossing up ideas, some of which probably suck and are terrible, but every once in a while, if you're in a position to catch it, it's like, oh, there it is. But if you're constantly on your phone, or you're constantly trying to do linear type execution of things, or you're focusing on something, the difference between driving home when you know which way to go, you can think of things while you drive.
Totally.
Versus when you have to follow a map, or you're looking at Google Maps, or you have to look at road signs and look for landmarks, completely different. Your brain is literally free to capture creative opportunities when you're in these kind of random thought states. So your creative process, your description of the creative process captures that to a T.
That's interesting. Yeah, I do realize that it's happening when my brain isn't occupied. Like walking that neighborhood is like a thoughtless activity.
Right.
I don't have to
but then you need the reps, like
Yes.
this is what I think a lot of people starting off in a field, they're like, oh, you just be creative by not, am I taking a lot of showers? I've been researching play for a while now. I mean, play is amazing because low stakes, going on stage for you is very high stakes, but low stakes activities done, the data show that if you play a game, like literally you can be competitive, but in general, if it's just low stakes, like your job doesn't depend on it, your reputation doesn't depend on it, your feelings of self-worth don't depend on it, like the opposite of the Michael Jordan phenotype. You play for 1 hour a week, 1 hour. Like just like play badminton with the kids, like, play it opposite handed or just do something for fun, just pure fun. That kind of focused activity, we know starts to tap into these creative networks.
Really?
Yeah. It doesn't happen during the play, but it seems to set a seed on some of these kind of what would otherwise be random thought generation patterns. And then people are able to just kind of capture. Later, there's this notion of capture, that all of a sudden you just got, there's something about play. I mean, I think it's hardwired into us. All animals play. As adults, we start to play less and less, or we tend to play hard, or we tend to like play tennis and you want to win. Like, so it's non-competitive, low stakes.
It totally changes when it's
totally changes.